All right, I know we're on a bit of a lag, so let's see if we're live. Get my chat up here. And let me know in the chat when you can see and hear me. It says I've been live for 12 seconds already. Maybe. Hi everyone. This is For the Love of Comics. Let me know if you can hear. Oh, look, there's some chat. All right. Hello. Good to see how I can be seen. I didn't realize there was chat on the screen. Can I? Okay. Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone. Hello, hello. Excellent, excellent. Hello, Tintin and other lovers. Usagi Ojimbo. Oh, I'm glad to see the conversations already going. Thank you. This is For the Love of Comics from New Delhi, India. And just like to give everyone a couple of minutes to see how many we get online. Where is everyone from? This is it's something I like. The last couple of times I've done a live stream, I really like starting out asking everyone. We've got someone from Kolkata. Joseph, good to see you too. I've got a couple of new things that I'm trying over here. You can see I don't know which way the screen is, but I've got For the Love of Comics coming up over here. Happy anniversary. Thank you very much. Yes, this is, unfortunately, I was too stricken with COVID-19 to do anything special for the 3-year anniversary. The 12th, I think it's the 12th of November or the 13th of November was when I first uploaded a video 3 years ago, which was the Akira box set video, which I recorded on my phone, and I put it up there for a couple of people, friends of mine online on Facebook, who wanted to look at it. I didn't realize that it was something I was going to keep doing. I'm really happy that I have, and encountered and met so many fantastic people on this channel in the comments, over Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and now most recently on our Discord server, which is a brand new thing that I've sort of put into place, but is mainly populated by a whole bunch of people who know a lot more about this. I am learning a little bit more about Discord, but it's been great. And so good to see so many familiar faces over here in the chat. Hello, welcome everyone for our coronavirus and 3-year anniversary live stream. As I was saying, because I got ill, I wasn't able to put together a special video or series of videos. In fact, I've been sort of absent from YouTube for a while now, sort of just catching up on my health. And I thought in this live stream I could just briefly talk about a couple of books that I've read recently, just fill you in on what's going on as far as the health stuff is concerned. I don't want to make this too much of an illness PSA and stuff like that, but I do want to take this opportunity to tell people to be really, really careful, because my wife and I both ended up testing positive for COVID-19 in spite of being really Tommy, how's the peeping? Hi everyone. Because I was going to say that we were really careful, both my wife and I. We've been very isolated. We've not been stepping outside of our house for months now, since March, working from home, not meeting with friends, not going out anywhere, except for a couple of trips to the market to get groceries and see my mother once a week. And yet we ended up getting COVID-19, which just goes to show you that you just can't be too careful. I mean, there's really, we've been trying to figure out how it happened. So my wife got it first, and we both got tested at the same time because she was displaying symptoms. And a week later, I had it as well. So I didn't test positive when she tested positive, but I started showing symptoms about a week later. So I'm running a week behind her. She's on the road to recovery. Luckily, we've both been stricken with what seems like a very mild case. We had slight temperature, fever for a couple of days, aches and pains. But otherwise, it's just been exhaustion or tiredness. Just we feel like sleeping or lying on the couch all the time, which is great if you can get it. But yeah, everyone, please be very careful. Be more cautious than you think. I think, in spite of our caution, we must have slipped up somewhere. Which just goes to show you that you. I mean, it can happen. I think we're still not sure how we got it. I mean, if it's the elevator in our apartment complex because the people upstairs tested positive some weeks before that, that's the best theory that we can come up with, is we took the elevator, or she took the elevator, that once a week when we went to the market, we've been wearing masks, we've been distancing, etc., etc. But luckily, we're much luckier than most people. So we didn't get, we didn't manifest any breathing problems. We didn't manifest extended periods of temperature, and we are recovering. Thank you so much. Yeah, we are recovering much. I mean, there are lots of people in much worse conditions, in much worse situations. We are. Well, I mean, she's young. I'm relatively. I mean, it's much more dangerous for senior citizens and the elderly. So the biggest problem has just been me not being able to go and see my mother because she's obviously at risk for a number of different reasons. So we've got to be completely isolated from her for a good 3 weeks before we can do anything. So I have taken off from work for the last week, and I was thinking about maybe getting back to work tomorrow or this week. I'm not sure yet. I'm lucky. I've been told that I don't have to rush back to work. I can take my time to recover, and recovery has taken the form of reading a lot of comics and watching a fair amount of TV. Although that is now. I mean, for the first couple of days, you really couldn't do anything about it. Happy Diwali to everyone over here celebrating Diwali in India and everywhere else. Hope you've had a safe and quiet Diwali. I live in Delhi, where I don't know why it's controversial, but firecrackers and fireworks are things that people seem to have contested opinions on. I prefer the Diwalis that are all about lights, and I hope that everyone's staying safe and enjoying themselves. Sometimes being too careful can make you more susceptible to COVID. That's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing my mother says. She's like, "Oh, look at you guys all being so careful and everything." She takes a very fatalistic approach. She's like, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. All of this precaution, etc. Which is, I mean, obviously not what I like to. That's possibly the most irritating thing about it, is where now that both of us got COVID, it seems like we can't say you should be careful because if we'd been, if we were right, then we wouldn't have gotten COVID or something like that. So it is a little irritating to have what you hope is a commonsensical and scientific and medical advice based approach, this thing. But yeah, again, I think with things like this, at least from what I've read and what little bit of research we've been able to do, herd immunity is kind of one of the things that you look for. The problem over there isn't obviously that everyone who gets infected is going to be hospitalized. It's a very small percentage of people, but it's about who the populations at risk are. So it's not about me being able to handle it or manage it or hope that I get a mild case of it. It's not even about that. It's about who you could transmit it to, especially if you're asymptomatic and you don't know that you're carrying it. So that's one of those things. Glad to see everyone. Yes, we are getting better. So we're getting better slowly but surely. It never got as bad as it could have. We hope that we're on the mend. At the same time, we have been warned by people that sometimes people think that they're over it, and they get back to physical activity and work and end up stressing themselves out or straining themselves out a little bit more, and then they have some sort of a relapse or it gets worse. So that's one thing that everyone's been warning us about. I mean, we're generally very careful, and we never work harder than we need to. So again, we are lucky that we are in a modern urban environment in which we can work from home or take off from work as we see fit. We're lucky that things get delivered and we don't have to step outside the house. We don't have to go out to work. We're lucky in a number of different ways. So that's been it's been bad, but nowhere near as bad as it could possibly have been, and how bad it is for some people. So for everyone, yes, take the stairs more often. Absolutely. I mean, it's an interesting thing, with these kind of correlations. Is we've just been sitting at home for so many months and isolated that we decided, now that the weather is getting cooler and everything like that, that we'll go out for walks more often, just to get some physical exercise, which has been so restricted. And we both got struck with this as soon as we started going out for a week and a half, 2 weeks after we started going out for walks. So again, you're completely isolated, you're wearing masks, you don't have anyone around you, you're walking in an open park. But if we want to, you can always say, well, this just goes to show you that physical activity and going out for walks is very bad for your health. And we were fine for 9 months just sitting at home, and as soon as you decide to be a little healthy, so you can make things into whatever argument you want. But yes, as Ashwita is saying in the chat right now, she did take the elevator, and I did try to take the stairs, again, just from the physical activity point of view. So I've been teasing her that it's probably the elevator that did it. And of course, once she had it, no matter how we try to keep ourselves isolated within one flat, we ended up with me getting it as well. But yeah, so much for all of that. Just everyone be careful. Hope you're enjoying yourselves safely. I know that we're getting to that part where in the United States you've got Thanksgiving coming up, and then of course the Christmas holidays. Well, yes, the air quality of Delhi, especially in the winter months, with the kind of things that happen around here, is. I mean, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's like everyone has some advice on what you should be doing and how you should be going about it. But yes, so we're recovering, we're doing well, and I thought that I would like to just because I haven't had the energy to set up and script a video and sit down with all the lighting and then do the editing and all of that stuff. But it has been a while since I've been here, and I thought that this would be a good way to sort of dip my toes into doing a little bit more work and being a little bit more active. So I thought a live stream in which I chat with you guys about, first of all, I've been very touched by everyone who's reached out and wished us good health on the community page here on YouTube and on Facebook, and I just wanted to reassure everyone that we're good. We're getting better. Thank you so much for your kindness. Thank you so much for your best wishes. I have the same for all of you. Hope you stay safe. Hope you stay away from this virus. But if it does happen, where I know that in some cases it's absolutely unavoidable in spite of your best efforts, some people, they're healthcare workers, they're key in what's going on, so they don't have the lucky options that we do of just staying at home, and they're exposed to this. So take care. But if you do get infected, pay proper respect to this thing. I mean, we've been monitoring our temperature, we've been doing steam inhalations, we've been drinking lots of hot liquids. We haven't required more medicine other than vitamins and things like that. Just take care of yourselves and take care of the ones around you, and make sure that you're not doing anything foolish. You're not thinking you're Superman or anything like that. Well, that's the lecture, the lecture part of it. Have I read the TKO Studios books yet? Arindam's question is about Sarah, and I got Sentient many weeks ago. I got Sarah a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't been able to get to them yet. One, because this sort of thing came out of nowhere, and then because of the backlog that I had, I realized that there were things that I needed to read first. But I'll get to them. I'll get to them very quickly. What I have been reading, what I did get to read, are a couple of books that I shared on the community page over here, as well as on the Discord server, I think. The first book I read was this one, Hawking, by Jim Ottaviani and Leland Myrick. This is a book that those of you who watched my video last year where I visited the book table at Oak Park, Illinois, I'd seen this book over there, and I hadn't realized that this is out. Ottaviani and Myrick did make one of my favorite nonfiction comics of all time, Feynman, which is another biography of a scientist. Jim Ottaviani, I talked about in my last live stream as well. He's one of my favorite nonfiction writers. He writes science comics. He writes biographies. He's got one on Alan Turing. He's got one on a number of people, Ashwita will tell you, who worked with primates. And he works with different artists, but Leland Myrick, whom he worked with on Feynman, is the artist of Hawking, which was a dense read, as you might imagine. I mean, Feynman is a great comic, is a fantastic comic, but I'm not going to pretend that I understand everything about the science of the things being discussed in it, QED and thermodynamics. I mean, I'm not a science student myself, but one of the reasons why I really enjoy Jim Ottaviani's science writing is because it isn't remedial. It's still pretty high level, but he allows the comics form. He writes in a way that lets the comics form do a very good job of getting those ideas and concepts across to you. At the same time, when he's doing biographies, he does a fantastic job at convincing you on the human side of the person he's talking about, not just their scientific genius or their accomplishments and things like that, but also the life they're leading, without it being this sort of melodramatic, Hollywoodized version. I mean, like Hawking, I saw the movie, which I thought, The Theory of Everything with Eddie Redmayne, which I thought was a decent movie, but it felt very Hollywood to me. This book did not. I'd like to give an example from Feynman. Hold on. So, for example, there's a section very early on in Feynman when he talks about how he sees formula and how he does maths, and the fact that he sees them in different colors, and then he has to wonder how it looks like to other people and how they see that. And let me... There, is that visible? This is something that I thought was beautiful. I mean, it's very simple in some ways. I mean, not it's mirrored, sorry. not this part, which is the formula, etc. But the fact that how colors and shapes work for the way he's seeing these things, and the way he thinks about these things, the way he approaches these things. I thought it was a very unique way to take what Feynman had written about himself, based on his autobiography, and put that across in comics. So Feynman was a terrific comic, but also Richard Feynman was a very colorful character, and he was a very interesting character. He worked in strip clubs, and he gave testimony in court about strip clubs. clubs, and he was a very good writer. So there were a lot of things that make him very popular and very appealing in a particular way. I didn't know if Hawking would be the same way. But what was very interesting about Hawking is that, if anything, it was even more steeped in tough science than Feynman. So, as I said, I'm not going to pretend that I understood even half of the different things that were being talked about. And it almost seemed like there was a history of things being given to you, from Newton to Einstein and beyond, connecting all of these things, in a through line of thinking about the universe and about physics, about gravity and things like that, where Stephen Hawking's contributions and thinking on these subjects was then placed in context. So you got a lot of stuff that you have to sort of have an idea about if you were to understand what he did. And again, I thought that the way the comics medium was used over here. So I will say that my understanding of a lot of these scientific concepts, especially of the black hole, the things that Stephen Hawking, among others, that he talked about, are very based in science fiction and what movies and books have done with that. And there's a fair amount of that in this, about how science fiction takes these things and runs with it and stuff like that. But even there, the concepts of mass and gravity. Hold on. The fact that time is affected by gravity. It's something that I've heard, but I was really happy to see things like this, which I think, again, I'm not going to say it made me understand, but it got these concepts across a little more clearly to me about what space-time actually is and how gravity is affecting it. The idea that you've got these sort of heavy spheres and how things are curving around them, as well as things that were theorized but then abandoned, these ideas of pocket universes, the idea that you go from one side to another, but something could sort of get away and make a little pocket universe, and then they say that no, that's not possible, and the reason why it's not possible. And the ideas in this book that I found to be the most impressive are the things that I find most impressive about science. The ideas that people can have theories and then they can abandon theories because somebody else postulates something better. So this idea of correcting yourself, the idea of saying, okay, we are going to try to replicate that, or we are going to see if these calculations make sense. People all over the world, people with an incredible amount of scholarship going into things, but the idea that it is a self-correcting system, the fact that this is the best idea we have right now, and then there are people, including Einstein, who don't want to think about something, who don't want to agree with something because they don't find it aesthetically pleasing, but then they come around to it and say, oh, actually that's pretty elegant, or okay, now I understand what you're saying, or now I agree with you. And that keeps happening over and over again over years. And that was one of the most amazing things in this book, that even if I don't understand a lot of it, I do understand that there are these very smart people who are spending all this time and who speak a vocabulary, which I thought was particularly interesting. These days where scientific thought and scientific approach seems to be taken with so much controversy, where people have where things are incredibly politicized about even believing something or not believing something is only a matter of faith, or only a matter of what you choose to believe. The idea that very often these days, I think a lot of conversation, a lot of discourse is not possible because you don't have a common vocabulary. I mean, you don't even mean the same things when you're trying to talk to each other or when you're trying to debate ideas. And the fact that both these books, actually, Hawking in particular, are so steeped in science and such rigorous science that is a common vocabulary for people, I thought was illuminating. These are both books. I mean, Feynman I've read 3 or 4 times now. I just love the way that comic approaches it. Hawking is a little tougher to read, but very rewarding. And I'm pretty sure that I'll be returning to Hawking several times in my life. I don't know if I'll understand the science more, but I do know that I really appreciate the this whole global community of scientists working on things independently and together. You know, the fact that you've got these universities and you've got these research areas and these publications and people working through that. There is a book called on Bertrand Russell and others called Logicomics, which also felt like that. Now, that's about logic, and so you've got maths, you've got logic, you've got physics, and these are all sort of connected, but they're all different in some ways. An interesting thing in Feynman, Hawking, as well as Logicomics is the presence of literature in these hard science and hard mathematics areas, because after a point of time, whether it's physics or whether it's maths or logic, they have a certain element of art to them. They have an element of poetry to them. And it's interesting to see how interested all these scientists, thinkers, mathematicians, philosophers, obviously, were in literature, which is another common thing that I found. So, yeah, so that was the first book that I wanted to talk about, Hawking by Jim Ottaviani, Leland Myrick, the same creators who brought us Feynman. Both of these published by First Second Press. A lot of Ottaviani is published by First Second. Not all. There are some books, but Primates, I think, is also First Second. Yes, and there's a big one I'm forgetting. Oh, The Imitation Game, which is not First Second. The Imitation Game, I think, is by Abrams Publishing. All right, let's see what's going on in the chat. Ashwita's telling people what I do. Thank you. Very, very complimentary. Art and science. Yes, absolutely. I mean, and again, I'm not a science person from the point of view of I don't have a very. But what's interesting about the comics creators over here, as well as the scientists they're talking about, Hawking and Feynman, is they all think that really it should be something that can be explained. It doesn't mean that, you know, a layman can do what these people do. We can't do these calculations, these equations, but the concept at some point of time needs to become so much of a truth that anyone can understand it or someone can get it. So I think when we think about things that 100 years ago were considered magic, that we just assume, we know that it's true, we know it's true. We don't necessarily have to understand every single scientific thing at the basis of it, but it is something that has helped us understand the world. So yeah, I definitely think that reading comics like this, I understand a little bit more than I maybe would have if it was just prose. And I think there's a reason why so many science textbooks are illustrated and illustrated in particular ways. But the other part of this, what I really enjoyed, is the biographical approach. So obviously you've got motor neuron disease that Stephen Hawking is suffering from, and starts at a young age, and he's given really only a couple of years to live. But then he keeps going, and that means that his study and his publications keep going. There was a very dense part of this book in the middle, but then it came to where he wants to write something because he needs money, and getting the chair, the wheelchair that he uses, essentially uses up all of his family's savings. And he's written 3 books or 4 books with Cambridge University Press, but now he wants to write a bestseller, and he wants to write a book that will make him a lot of money. And that part of it, as Ashwata was telling people working in publishing, I found that part to be fascinating of what the editors said to him and how it went back and forth with the publishers, and how it was going to be Cambridge University Press, but then Bantam got in touch with him, who had recently had a bestseller with Feynman's book. Feynman actually makes an appearance in Hawking. It's like having a little cameo in there because it's the same artist and the same writer. And then Norton, no, it was Norton who had recently published Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. And then there was a bidding war between Norton and Bantam Books to see who would publish Stephen Hawking's book. And so Cambridge University Press was just left way out of there. But yeah, that was a great book to read. Hamza Gardi, hello, how are you? Long time no see. I'm doing well. I just recapped my health tribulations at the top of this at the top of this thing, but I am recovering well from COVID-19, although I'm still due for another good week, 10 days of complete isolation. Did you ever teach at Jadavpur University? No, I didn't teach at Jadavpur University. I have visited over there on, they have an editing and publishing course that I go and speak for 1 or 2 classes a year. This year, obviously, it didn't take place over there, but it did take place over Discord. But yes, I'm familiar with Jadavpur University, but I'm not faculty or anything like that. I'm just a guest speaker for their publishing diploma course over there. Berlin by Jason Luce. Yes, Berlin is, Berlin's one of those books where I've been waiting to make a video on it. It's just, it deserves a lot more. Every time I try to think about what I want to say about Berlin, I just it's like, no, this, I've got to think about it a little bit more. It's really, it's one of those books that I think is superb in almost every way, and is really a book that we should be reading today. Even if it's Weimar Republic sort of history thing, it's very pertinent and it's very well done. The multiple character approach is also, I think, really well done. She took my course. It's, again, not really a course, but well, hello. The next book that I'd like to talk about that I've read is also a science-ish kind of book and biography again, but very, very different from Darwin. Not Darwin. Spoiler. Is Darwin. An Exceptional Voyage. And interestingly enough, that same video that I was referring to, Indie Comics at an Independent Bookstore, is I encountered this book at the same time. This is written by Fabien Grolot and illustrated by Jeremy Royer, published by Nobrow Press. And I had read their previous book, which is Audubon, On the Wings of the World, a couple of years ago, which was a fantastic book about James Audubon and his illustrations and story of him. And this, again, these books very much like Darwin and I keep saying Darwin, Hawking and Feynman. These books, they look fantastic together because they've been published by Nobrow in a very similar style, obviously with the same artist and the same writer, particularly the same art style over there. And Darwin: An Exceptional Voyage was a superb book. It does focus on Darwin's Beagle voyage. So the 5 years that he spent on the ship and the observations and the travels over there. So it gets into the publication of The Origin of the Species, which happened some years later, and then hints at what followed after that. But it's mainly about the voyage, and it's a beautifully illustrated, gorgeously drawn and painted book that I thought was just fantastic, just like Audubon. I enjoyed Audubon a lot. Thank you so much, Pratay. Thank you very, very much for your contribution. Darwin is like Audubon, slightly, I wouldn't say it's a fanciful biography, but it is like, and actually, like all biographies, it will take some licenses with the story that it's telling. So you will have the conflation of characters. Instead of having a separate character, someone who said one thing and someone who said another thing that are kind of similar. And we've seen this before in a lot of biographies and movies and books and things like that. And the authors are the first people to admit that in notes at the end, where they say that things will be put together for narrative purposes. But the truth of the matter still remains. We do have some very, very interesting notes at the end of the book that tell you exactly how much license and how much truth there is in some particular things. For example, Darwin's opposition to slavery at the time that he lived and worked, obviously, it was a very common thing, and very few people really opposed it. He was one of the people who opposed it, but there wasn't much he could do about it. And there are, like, when he goes to Brazil, for example, over here, it's something that he observes, that there is this kind of beauty and this kind of ugliness right next to each other. And some of the stuff that he's talking about obviously is about imperialism and is about colonialism and is about things that have to do with concepts that today are very easily, dismissed and categorized rightfully as horrors and terrible things. But he has to live in that world, so including the ship's captain, the Beagle's captain, and the fact that there are natives who have been uprooted and taken to civilization, and they're being brought back to sort of be evangelists for the church. These are things that I didn't expect, something that looks this beautiful and this pretty and this elegant to also have in there. I thought it was going to be a pretty simple sort of biography dealing with what he's observing on these islands. But for example, the Galapagos stuff is it's the last part of the voyage. It's the 5th section in this book. A lot of it has to do with going around South America. It has to do with the other side and Tierra del Fuego and the winter at Tierra del Fuego. Just a lot of different things in this can give you, if you just look at some pages, if you're just skipping through the pages, it may make you think that this is very, pretty, beautiful, maybe something for children or an all ages type of book. And there's absolutely nothing wrong about that. I mean, I do think this can be read by anyone, but it is, it does have dark parts in it. And what I really appreciated about Darwin was how the story, in spite of it being, about this wonderful voyage, also had these concepts of what his publications would later end up challenging, which has to do with how old is the earth and what does the Bible tell us, and, what do these missionaries preach when they go to these countries and these other continents. What are they talking about? That's the kind of stuff that that I completely wasn't expecting, and I thought was wonderful. So I would highly recommend Fabien Groslo's and Jeremy Roy's Darwin, even more than Audubon, which is a fantastic book, which I read some years ago and really enjoyed. And Audubon himself as a character, just like Darwin himself as a character, are very endearing characters. You really feel drawn to them. You really want to go on their journey with them. And I know that Audubon's criticism, for example, is where his illustrations of the birds aren't scientific. They're very stylized, and they're accurate, but they're just done in such a way that they end up being extremely appealing. So there's something interesting. I mean, we could take a sort of meta approach to say that how does one draw in a reader? And it's these biographies that do similar things. Is it all about absolute accuracy and absolute fidelity to every single part of the truth, or is it a larger thing about the story that you end up telling, how it connects with people and what it does and what's more or what's important? And I think these are interesting questions that these biographies bring up, Audubon and Darwin, but also Hawking and Feynman, is that even if it isn't absolutely about something being 100% true, I mean, who's to say what is true unless you had a video recording or, an audio tape? And then again, you need context for that as well. The real truth is something that is born later almost, of the stories that you tell, of what you do with these things. So I thought they were fantastic. So published by Nobrow Press, Audubon on the Wings of the World and Darwin and Exceptional Voyage are two other books that I can recommend. So those are the two big reads. I mean, Hawking took me a long time to read. It was, I mean, it wasn't a slog. It was just, it's a tough book to read. Darwin was the other way around. Like, I had to slow myself down to make sure that I'm not skipping by too fast, because I wanted to absorb all of these gorgeous illustrations and, but also the story. I wanted to have the story wash over me rather than flip the pages, which was tempting, particularly if I went straight, oh, that's a copy paste because I went straight from Hawking to Darwin. So Hawking is a dense read, which you take your time with because you want to understand these things, but you also understand why these things are important. Why is the process of science and all of this thing important? Whereas with Darwin, it's almost like the birth of these kind of things in some ways, of how things are being observed and how conclusions are being drawn. And I also learned a fair amount that I did not know, like how Darwin became a celebrity while he was on that voyage, just because he was sending specimens back to England and because he was writing letters to people. And so it reminded me of Jules Verne, where there's a club of people sitting over there somewhere and who are getting these letters and reading about this person who's traveling. And so he became famous and he became very well known in high society even before he returned to England because of what he was doing. So yeah, excellent stuff. Excellent books. Biographical comics, yes, I completely agree, because I think I stayed away from biographical comics for a long time. I mean, when I was a kid, I read a lot of Indian comics that were published in India that were biographical. So they were about famous people, so there were mythological comics and stories about folk tales, and then there were biographies. So a lot of this, and especially for adults, those were the comics. It was good. It was, they're good for you because they're about freedom fighters, or they're about scientists, etc. Or, they tell you about the cultural aspects that you should know more about. So those were the comics you were not looked down upon for reading. Or if you are going to read comics, you should read that. But after that, after my childhood, I sort of created an impression that all biographical comics were that way. They were like polemical. They were there to teach you a lesson, and they were telling you about noble people and noble lives, and very very much about modeling how you should be and who you should admire and things like that. It's only much, much later, many years later, that I started reading biographical comics and seeing them the way that, and I think it worked the same way in movies. I used to think that biographical movies are very sanitized, whitewashed, very, again, polemical, teaching you a lesson, public service sort of things. The warts and all biographies, or why someone is great in spite of certain things, those are the kind of complexities that I think I've only recently started to discover as a comics reader. Again, even when I returned to reading comics, it took me a while before I got to reading nonfiction comics. And it started with something like journalism, really, not biography. Joe Sacco's work was, I've mentioned this on a couple of other occasions, was revelatory to me that you can use the comics form to do that. So I think the next step was autobiography and biography. And I think autobiography in some ways is more understandable because you have so many autobiographical comics and you have a very unique, distinct voice about a unique life or an experience that is very personal. So even if it's not unique from the achievements point of view, it's a very unique way of putting it because I'm writing and drawing a story of my life. Biography, writing and drawing about someone else's life and someone else's achievements, I think is much tougher because you're trying to get to a truth and you're trying to get to saying something. And then I'm sure there are problems of you don't want to offend people and you must have family or estate agree to something. So it's always interesting of whether you will get something truly good or will you get something a little more whitewashed, a little more sandpapered and things like that. Had my alarm set, but I fell back asleep. Yeah. I hit my snooze on many occasions, and I think working from home has certainly not been good for this habit because now I can sleep until the very minute that I need to start working. All I need to do is just get to my laptop and turn it on, so I don't have a commute and getting dressed and all of that stuff. So it's just been very bad. Hi, it's very good to see everyone over here. It's very kind. Hi, Christina. Peter says Joe Sacco was a big entry point. Yeah, nonfiction. I think that'll be true for a lot of people. I think Joe Sacco is one of those people who has really changed comic book reading in a way that few other people have, So, I mean, I think I put Joe Sacco on the same level as Art Spiegelman from the point of view of reaching new readers and giving them a sort of mind-blowing experience about what the medium can be. I mean, it's not to say that there aren't other people doing the same thing or there weren't other people doing these things before them. It's just that it's the same kind of impact, where Mouse had a certain impact, Persepolis had a certain impact. Fun Home, I think, had a certain impact. Jimmy Corrigan had a certain impact, and Palestine and Safe Area Garage in particular. And I mean, Joe Sacco was doing comics before them, and he has. It's interesting to read some of Joe Sacco's early comics, where he's a roadie and for music band and rock bands and. I read some of his older comics that he did with Harvey Pekar. They're all great, but I think his journalism comics sort of blew the game wide open for a lot of people. Do you like Calvin and Hobbes? Absolutely. This is an interesting question. Is there someone who doesn't like Calvin and Hobbes? I mean, I think I may have asked this question before. I really don't think I've met anyone who has read Calvin and Hobbes and not loved Calvin and Hobbes. I know there are a lot of comics that I love and also newspaper comics. They can divide people. I mean, and it depends on how far you go from when they stop being published. So there are a lot of comics that we can appreciate historically, but may not like at a gut level. So we understand what they did. I think there are a lot of comics that even if you go to them today, you can really appreciate, but not everyone will do so universally. So whether it's Crazy Cat or Gasoline Alley, Little Nemo, and with very good reason, where people can say, well, it's great art, but the writing is terrible and this, that, and the other. But I don't think Calvin and Hobbes, I've met anyone. Oh, wow, someone here doesn't like Calvin and Hobbes. Well, see, there you go. There's always going to be a variety of things that, and this is a good segue into what we like and what we don't like. And there was a question over here. Sorry, I'm just getting distracted by the questions that I'm seeing. Your name, one, I think I'd seen this before. My name is Angshuman. I've mentioned that in a couple, but not most of my videos. But there are these videos I do with my wife called Sharing the Sandman. So we do give our names over there. One of the books that I've been looking forward to, one of the comics that I've been looking forward to reading for a long time is this one, Monster by Urasawa, which I'd mentioned before as one of the manga that one of the manga series that I'm really looking forward to. I have talked about Pluto on a couple of different occasions. It features in my top 10 sci-fi comics video. Spoilers, sorry. In case you haven't seen that, I thought Pluto was fantastic. I did get a couple of volumes of 20th Century Boys, but it's got a lot of volumes and I haven't been able to find, so I don't know whether I'm going to be able to read that series or not. I saw that Monster is fewer volumes, and this is called the Perfect Edition, so I don't know if these are the original volumes or if there are two volumes in one. And I've been really looking forward to this. So this is another comic that I read, and it's an incredibly renowned comic. A lot of people call this one of the best manga they've ever read, or one of the best comics they've ever read, and I enjoyed it. But just goes to show you, I wasn't completely blown away, at least not from this one first volume. I appreciated many things about it. One, I appreciated the pacing. It's kind of slow, but it's a really good slow burn. It's one of the best slow burns where the moments are sort of allowed to sort of exist instead of just pushing you forward with plot, where you get a character, you get the situation. The second thing that I appreciated is the situation where the lead, who's a doctor, it's set in a hospital, and the hospital politics of it, where he's engaged to a woman and her father is the director or the chairman of the hospital, and the politics of doctors and who knows who and who gets which position, and those things are very interesting. And so this kind of whiz-kid surgeon, he's a brain surgeon, and his abilities and being at the beck and call of his father or his to-be father-in-law was great. And then there's a situation, and I'm not going to have any spoilers, there's a situation in which he's called upon to operate, and then there are repercussions from that, and there are other things. And this is I'm just giving you a glimpse of the art style, and all of these things are things that I really enjoyed. What I think wasn't as, and it's not the pacing, it's the sort of expostulation. I don't know if this is, I've seen this in some other comics as well, where things are really dramatic and they're very loud, and people they deliver exposition in an exclamation, and sometimes they think aloud in exclamations. And there is a certain stylistic approach which you settle into when you have things like that. So it's the vocabulary of a particular form or a particular story. It's just that for this one, I felt that there was a lot of it, and the mileage that came out of it wasn't that, which is very different from the way I felt about Pluto, where I found the sort of bursts of drama to be perfectly pitched to what the story was revealing and how the story was revealing it. I did still enjoy it. I mean, I wouldn't say that, but I felt myself growing a little impatient, not with the plot progression, but with the tone of the thing, where I understand that you are subjugated. I understand that you're trying to be independent. I understand that this is something that is mysterious. The mystery of it really gets going. It goes to another level when you get more than halfway through this volume, but because there are so many volumes in this, I'm guessing that this has to do with the pacing of the story. So I think with Monster, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check out one more of these perfect editions. I'm not the kind of person who has to read every single volume, especially in longer series. If I don't enjoy something, I don't have to collect something in order to have every single volume on the shelf. I used to be that way, but it's just, life's too short. So I'm going to give one more volume. I'm going to give this series, one more volume. And if I'm not hooked, if I don't feel compelled to continue at the end of that, I may have to abandon it. In which case, I'll try 20th Century Boys, which, given how good Pluto was, I have faith in Naoki Urasawa. I know that he's capable of doing the kind of storytelling that really appeals to me. I'm not yet sure if Monster is one of them. So it just goes to show you, it's not like everything blows me away, although I guess sometimes my videos may give that impression. And what is the longest series you've read? Oh my goodness, I don't know. What's a really... it depends, right? If we're talking about a continuous... I'm not that big a reader of very long series. Ultimate Spider-Man has a lot of issues, right? So I think Ultimate Spider-Man's pretty long. Fables is a pretty long series. Usually it's runs within. So right, Monster, the burn is slow but worthwhile. Yeah, as I said, I don't really have a problem with slow burns. I quite like slow burns, actually. I like the development of character. It's just it's one of those cliches that I had when I was younger about anime, when I hadn't seen enough anime and when I hadn't read when I hadn't watched a wide range of anime. So I only knew something from like Saturday cartoons or something like that, where it seemed like everyone was shouting all the time, and they had crazy hairstyles. So there is a tendency, I think at one point of time I thought all anime is about people shouting all the time and being very, very loud and being very dramatic. Of course, I know that is not the case. So the fear that I had with Monster is that it reminded me a little bit of that, where it seemed like a lot of exclamations and a lot of loud expressions, but not necessarily warranted every step of the way. But again, that could just be the tone of something, and it could just be the approach that someone's taking, and I just need to get used to that. As the story unfolds, I think it might overcome that. So as said, I'll give it one more Dragon Ball Z, yes. I'll give it a little bit more, but one a good friend of the channel's has recommended to me to try out another manga which I haven't started yet, The Drifting Classroom, which I've heard is extremely disturbing and quite scary and very weird. And all of those things sound extremely appealing to me. People on the Discord server were reading Uzumaki for Halloween. And although I didn't get to join in those conversations, I mean, Junji Ito is someone who I've really appreciated and really enjoyed. I'm not sure where this measures up compared to that, but this is it's 3 volumes only, so it's not that big a commitment. I've heard, especially from Paul Hatcher, whose package I opened in one of my videos, who sent me a whole bunch of comics from Northampton, and he recommended this series, which he said, even though he's not a manga reader in general, this is something that he really enjoyed and really creeped him out. So I found this Viz hardcover editions of this, and I asked a couple of my friends who do read manga, who have read this, and they also said that it's completely worth it. So that's the next manga I'm going to read this volume while I wait for volume 2 of Monster to get here. So so far Monster's not a supernatural, I mean, it's got it's certainly got some sort of a fear aspect to it, but so far it's not outright supernatural. Definitely nothing like Junji Ito's work. So the Drifting Classroom might be a different kind of approach or a different kind of thing. I don't have any idea about it other than the fact that it's supposed to be really, really scary. So yeah, I'll have a video up on the Drifting Classroom once I've read on it, because I think it's, I mean, people who've been following this channel for a while know that I do read manga and I have read manga, but I'm nowhere near as steeped in it as a lot of you are. So I really do rely on you giving me recommendations and then me seeing how they line up with the kind of stuff that I've read. Now, what's really interesting to note is that manga is just, it's comics. So it's a question of form. It's not a genre. So you can have so many different kinds of approaches and you can have so many different kinds of genres and different kinds of storytelling. I have gravitated, I started reading, the first manga I read, as I've discussed before, was Lone Wolf and Cub and Akira. And I've recently enjoyed the works of, Junji Ito's, but I really, really enjoyed The Walking Man and A Distant Neighborhood by Jiro Taniguchi. Taiyo Matsumoto's Sunny was so those are the creators that I know that, and once I've read a second work or a third book by them, I found them to be great as well. So there's no doubt in my mind that I will enjoy manga. It just depends on the particular work. I don't have a problem with genre. I love science fiction, I love horror, but I also like realistic fiction, pacing, etc. It's all about the craft. You know, if someone's doing something really well, what they want to do, it's something that that I can admire. So I think the Drifting Classroom is the next thing I'll read. I've got a Matsumoto book, Ping Pong, that I found online that I've ordered. I've still not gotten it delivered yet. So that's what my manga reading seems to be. It's going to be the Drifting Classroom. It's going to be the next volume of Monster. It's going to be Ping Pong. And there's one I'm forgetting. I can't remember which one. But there's another book that I have ordered that. What are some good short manga series that would be good for beginners? So that's a good question to ask. Ask the gang over here. We've got a lot of experts over here, and that's something that I would want to. Sunny by Taiyo Matsumoto. Yes, exactly. I thought that was fantastic. And it's 6 volumes. So, I mean, it's 6 books and then they're quick reads. So I thought that was great as well. Planetes is another one that I really, really appreciated. Children of the Sea, Bride Story. But again, these do have multiple volumes. But the thing that I really liked about Bride Story is you can kind of read 3 volumes and be fine. You know, you think that's the end of the story. And I think from volume 4 or volume 5, it goes to different characters. So you might almost treat that as a separate story. And I think they come back to the characters you had in volumes 1, 2, and 3 from volume 6 onwards. So there's you don't have to read it continuously. And Lone Wolf and Cub, honestly speaking, I don't think I've read every single Lone Wolf and Cub story there is. I've read the first half dozen for sure. I've read the last 3 or 4 volumes, and I've read ones in the middle. But there are stories in there that I have not gotten my hands on and not gotten to read. But it's a road story, so it works. You know, it does have a definite end, so I'm glad that I got to read the end of it. Nobody's forcing me into reading manga. I mean, but I do want the kind of recommendations that I've been enjoying getting. I think what happens when, and this is true for anyone, you know, like once you have a certain number of books that you say you love, other people kind of start figuring out what you could possibly also love. That's just, you know, it's like, oh, if you like that, then you will love this. If you enjoyed that, you will really love this. Of course, there are also people who will be like, well, this is nothing at all like that other thing. So if you want to give it a shot. But that's why I like the conversations, you know, that's why I like the conversations in the comments and in over email, over chat with all of you, is because of that exchange of what I've experienced, what you've experienced. A lot of what I put on my channel, a lot of people will say, yeah, I love that too. But a lot of people will also say, wow, I'd never heard of that, or, you know, I've never heard of that book, or I've never seen something like this. And that's the whole point, is like, I'm not saying it's something you have to love. I'm just saying it's something that I loved enough to make a video on, so maybe you can give a shot. And that's the kind of stuff that I like having go. Yeah, and you know, there are lots of lists everywhere, and I think that's the entire point of lists. Lists aren't there to say that this is the definitive truth and this is, you know, sort of gospel. It's about an opinion, and it's what I like about lists is because it's a range. So the way I always make my lists, those of you who've watched my lists will know, is that I don't try to make a list of just my absolute favorites. Although that obviously is an aspect to it. It's also to say that if you don't like this one, you might like this one. If you don't like this one, you might like this one. So somewhere on this list, a good list to me is something that will have something on it, at least 1 or 2 things that somebody or the other will love. So it doesn't mean that you have to love all 10 things. I might be the person who's bringing them together. So I say, I love all these things. I love all 10 of these. But I also feel comfortable that there's not going to be anyone who hates every single thing. I mean, I guess there could be, but you know, you understand what I'm saying. Hello, welcome to everyone who's coming, getting on here for the first time. What do you think about Tezuka mangas? Tezuka is one person whom I've heard very good things about Phoenix, but copies of Phoenix are very difficult to find. I think I started reading Buddha once. It didn't hold my attention, but that's probably got more to do with me than any fault of the work. So that's something that I may want to try again. I tried like twice, and I didn't get into it. I've watched Astro Boy as a kid on, you know, cartoons and stuff like that, which isn't the same thing at all. But I had enough familiarity for Pluto to be just a fantastic work of adaptation. But Tezuka, I believe, is one of those really big holes in my reading, and everyone has them. I've got more than my fair share, I'm sure. Historical comics. It's not really manga, but another book that I recently read is Usagi Yojimbo Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the complete crossover comics. So this is a collection of every single time the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Usagi, Miyamoto Usagi, have shared the page. And I got this. This is a paperback from Dark Horse, which, honestly speaking, I have more than half of these comics already. There are maybe 2 or 3 of them that I do not have, but I found it cheap. I got a good deal on it, and it's it's an edition. And this is the kind of stuff that is easy to read in bed, and it's easy to give to people if they're interested in it. But also because I wanted to do an edition comparison between what I realized is I haven't made a video on the Mirage series of Usagi Yojimbo. So I have a video on the early stories, which is the Fantagraphics stuff from Albedo Critters and Fantagraphics, and then I have a video in which I show the Dark Horse Saga hardcovers, etc. The Saga books actually start with the 16 issues that Stan Sakai did with Mirage Comics, and I have the Mirage singles. But what happened with the Mirage comics is that they were originally published in color, and then the color plates were lost or damaged or something. So all reprints of those stories have always been in black and white. Now, I know that IDW is reprinting Usagi Yojimbo in color, so that'll be recolored, I'm guessing, when they get to those stories. So the single issues of Mirage Comics are the only places where those 16 stories, where those 16 issues can be read in color, because every time they've been reprinted in trade paperback, in the hardcovers, including in this, they are in black and white. So Shades of Green is that story, which is, I think, a 3-part story that was published in Usagi Yojimbo's Mirage Comics run. Yes, 3-part story. And Shades of Green was the story in which all 4 of the turtles meet Miyamoto Usagi for the first time. There were stories before that. So Turtle Soup and Rabbit Stew, The Crossing, and The Treaty are 3 stories featuring Leonardo and Miyamoto Usagi. And Leonardo was the only person, was the only turtle who had met Usagi before Shades of Green. Now, these are great stories, except for there's one story in here called The Crossing, I think. So Turtle Soup and Rabbit Stew is written and illustrated and lettered by Stan Sakai, which appeared in Turtle Soup #1. Now, this is a story that I do not own, so this is one of the stories that I wanted. This story, which is written by Peter Laird, it's drawn and written by Peter Laird, and it's got a very different type of Usagi. Let me show you. There you have Peter Laird's Usagi, and I'm not a big fan of this story now that I've read it. It seems very inconsistent in certain ways. It is a flashback story, etc., so it's all right. And then there is a story in Shell Shock, which is another comic by Mirage. This one, which again starts in our contemporary TMNT world. So these are the 2 stories. I think this middle one was there in as a backup story. These are stories that I'd never read or owned. What I do have is the new book, the Namatsu, which is a one-shot, which is it was published in hardcover and in color, which is how it's reprinted over here. And if you hadn't picked that up, this is the crossover to get. This is a great story. It's nice, and Usagi Yojimbo fans will have a couple of characters that they are familiar with, and you also have Splinter and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles make an appearance in medieval feudal Japan, where Usagi Yojimbo takes place. This has got some of those fantastical elements. Not all of Usagi Yojimbo has fantastical elements in it. There are some stories that have magic and monsters. Most of them tend to be historically realistic, except for anthropomorphic animals. But when you have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles appear, you obviously have some sort of fantastical elements going on, and that is the story that I would highly recommend to everyone. This book also has a lot of extras, which was another reason that I was tempted to get it. A lot of sketch pages, a lot of drawings, and just a wonderful little collection of 4 or 5 stories encompassing all of the crossover stuff between Usagi Yojimbo and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Right, about the color. Right. I was just reading a question about the lack of color. Yeah, I would have thought that you would have maybe replicated. I guess what you're talking about is high res scans of existing pages. From what I understand, it's usually from film, not color plates really, but the film coming out of those plates. And sometimes when that is not possible, then you have the kind of archival efforts into taking high resolution scans of, pristine copies if you can find them, etc., etc. But I think from what I'd read, again, this was some while ago, it's the films that have been destroyed. So can you get the color replication by scanning copies of the Mirage comics? Of course, yeah. They've just never done that. I think they always print from film, and or the color film or something like that is not available. I did realize this when I saw the trade paperbacks that had collected those stories, and I was curious about whether these stories would be in color in the saga volumes, in the hardcover or the paperback saga volumes, and they're not. And there's a note in there saying why they don't have the color. But yeah, from what I know, if you're in the United States or places where these things are more easily available, the Mirage Comics issues are actually not that rare or not that expensive, which I find to be astonishing, because it's a good middle part of Usagi Yojimbo, and the fact that they're color, and the fact that it's 16 issues in color and it's got some complete arcs in it. I'm really surprised that they're not. But I have wanted to make an edition comparison video in which I show those colors, because Usagi Yojimbo has a couple of color specials from Fantagraphics and Dark Horse, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover that I mentioned. But that's the only time, the Mirage run is the only time when they've just been in color constantly for 16 issues. So I do want to talk about it in a video. It's just one of those videos that I've got to get to one day. Artist edition book reviews up your sleeve for next year. I don't, I've got to get my hands on them first, and they're very difficult to get over here. And I usually pick up 1 or 2 at most artist editions if I travel abroad, and if I travel to visit my sister, which obviously was 0 this year, and I don't know what the situation is, and I don't know if I'm going to get to travel. So chances are low, I would say. It's also a big problem because whenever you buy those big heavy books, one of the first issues you have is that takes up your weight limit. You only have a suitcase or 2 available, and I'm usually loading them up with books, but books are heavy, and when you buy an artist edition, it's a hardcover huge book, so that takes up so much room and it takes up so much weight that you have very little ability to get anything else. So it's always a tough choice. So yeah, so that's what I've been reading so far, and I've got a couple of one more thing that I did read. It's because someone I was chatting with online mentioned how they'd read The Umbrella Academy for the first time and really enjoyed it, and I'd read The Umbrella Academy a long time ago and enjoyed it. This is like way back when I first read Day Tripper, on which I made a video as well. When I first read yeah, like monograph or I mean anything at that size, those artist editions anyway. But when I first read Day Tripper, I'd started hunting out anything by Gabriel Ba and Fabio Moon I could find, which included a couple of books from Dark Horse, Picture, and Details, and also individual work that they had done. And Umbrella Academy at that time, you know, I came across that because I was looking for anything by Ba and Moon, and that was obviously drawn by Gabriel Ba. And I read it and I really enjoyed it. It didn't blow me away. I didn't think it was fantastic, but I did really enjoy it. So recently, because of the TV show, when I watched it, I really enjoyed the TV show. In fact, my memory sort of was saying that it might be better than the comic that I remember reading. It seemed to have a lot more character work, etc. But I was talking with someone online who also has a YouTube channel, and they were talking about reading the Umbrella Academy after the TV show and really enjoying the comics. And in that discussion, they were like, "Oh, you should give it another shot." So I did. I decided to get. I got a good price on the Umbrella Academy Apocalypse Suite library edition. Much like I mean, you know, once you oversize something and put it into hardcover, give it a nice little ribbon, you're giving it the best shot it has. If it still doesn't appeal to you, it's not going to work. So I was able to get my hands on this, and so I reread the Umbrella Academy's first arc, Apocalypse Suite, in this form, which is just before it's a beautiful edition. I mean, I love Dark Horse production, the attention that they give it. This is the same dimensions as the Hellboy library editions. It's just slim. It's absolutely beautiful to read, and I read through this and I enjoyed it. I thought it was better than I remember. It's still not the best, but I really did have a good time. It felt very cheeky and effervescent. I think it's got, you know, it's full of one outrageous thing after another, but also very, I think, very stylistically done. And I did feel that what I liked about the show, which was a little bit more of the psychological drama, etc., was something that I would have liked to see more of. But the comic is its own thing, you know, and it's not really about comparing. It's one of those comics that is so full of ideas that they're just chock full of them. Like every page, every sort of conversation is hinting at things and is insinuating things, and every panel is full of things, and every so it's the density of it is quite marvelous, and it's quite light. It's got quite a light touch in spite of that kind of stuff. So I did enjoy it. From what I remember from way back, I may have enjoyed Dallas more than Apocalypse Suite. So the fact that rereading it in this handsome format was appealing. I am going to pick up Dallas in this form as well and give that a shot, because I remember enjoying that more. So I'm sure that I will enjoy the hardcover library edition of that. I have not read Hotel Oblivion, and that's the latest one that just came out, and so now I can get myself a third hardcover, as long as Dallas doesn't absolutely. But I mean, it's good stuff. I know that it's good stuff. So the name Umbrella Academy reminds me of, yes, the Umbrella Corporation. Yes, that's I think that might have been what I thought of initially at first as well. I wish more comics were printed in a large format. Absolutely. I mean, I think there are some comics, and that really depends on the art style and the way it's designed, that as miniature items and as small books are wonderful things. And I've got a number of small comics that are designed to be small and are, they don't have that many lines and the way a page looks, etc. But for the most, the larger, this size is a great size if you're using this kind of traditional layout, or even if you're not. It's just art and writing both are just so much more enjoyable. They're so accessible, and I think this more as my eyesight fades with age, is that it just makes reading them a pleasure. And I really agree with that. I wish more comics were at this size. I mean, so this is something that, this is your traditional comic book format, and I think this is about the smallest it should be. It shouldn't be smaller than that. So when there are reprints, and I understand the manufacturing and the pricing concerns, etc., when there are reprints that shrink comics down from what they were originally published at, I just can't bring myself to appreciate them. I appreciate the access, for example, if they make something available to readers who would not otherwise be able to afford them and all of that stuff. I really appreciate them, but I don't have to buy them. I just heard electric guitar. What was that? I think that was a subscriber or something like that. Welcome, whoever was the new subscriber. Tales of Woodsman Pete by Lily Carrick. Absolutely. I was trying to think of some really good examples. That's a perfect example of a little miniature, little square book. It's got a woodcut feel to it. It's got a wonderful yellow parchmentish paper. I mean, that book, I wish I had it in hand. It's a great example. That idea of those stories or those fables and etc. being put across in that, it's very much about that sort of thing. And I think Lily Carrick has got a couple of other ones. 9 Ways to Disappear, also a little square bound square book, and those are, I think, the exceptions. There's a different type of integrity to that kind of thing, but otherwise unavailable. Single issues you'd recommend it. I don't know much about single issues, but I'm sure that people commenting and watching over here will know. I mean, I'm always thrilled when I see people in the United States and their comics collections. Sleepy Reader 666 is on here. You should check out his channel. There are so many comics that are published in that single issue form that may never get collected, that may, that might be indie, or that might be small press, or they don't see trade paperback or hardcover collections and stuff like that. And I think there is a completely different approach to that. I think the speculator and the buying to sell later or to slab, etc., I think that changes the game a little bit. It's very much about like for example, I really enjoyed Saga of the Swamp Thing, Alan Moore's run on that. And even though I first read it in trade paperback, I really had this romantic idea of wanting to read every single issue in single issue form, because I wanted to sort of pretend that I was an American who was reading Swamp Thing as it was coming out as a monthly, and reading it like a chapter at a time, just because that story was told so brilliantly in that format. So I started collecting the single issues, and over a long period of time, I was able to get my hands on almost every single issue, except for, like, what was it, 26 and 37 or something, because one was the first cameo appearance of John Constantine and the other was the official appearance of John Constantine. And it's just like, it's ridiculous because I can't have, I mean, I have the collected editions, but it was so silly that the comics were not that expensive and they were great stories, and I was able to get my hands on them cheap, and I was able to buy lots, from eBay, etc., except for 26 and 37 or 27 and 36 or something like that. It's so that's always been a little bit of a frustration for me, is that I can't have 15 Jack Kirby's 2001 Space Odyssey adaptation is, there was a question about adaptation, and, I'm slowly beginning to appreciate adaptations more. I didn't like them before because I had a preconceived. But Kirby's adaptation of 2001 Space Odyssey is something, that's in 10 issues, and I was like, oh, that looks good, and I can't find a collection, so I thought I can get these singles. But I can't get number 5 or number 6 or something like that because that's the first appearance of Metal Man. And it's just like, I can't make the collection I want for the story because there are certain things that are more expensive, and I'm sure it had the same print run as number 5 would have had the same print run as number 6 and number 7, but it's just rarer because more people want it for it being a key issue, or it's that kind of stuff that really irritates me about single issues. It's like, I want to be able to read 6 issues, back to back, and I don't want one to be all right. What are we talking about over here? Printing works in oversized editions. Yeah. Does Mrs. For the Love of Comics also read comics? Yes, she does, and she's on these comments section, so she can. She doesn't read the way I read it, but she's been reading, and she had some interesting first comics, and I always tell people that she started reading comics and then she read From Hell was one of the earliest comics that she read as an adult comics thing, and she really enjoyed it. So I always use that as an example of how any good comic can be a good gateway comic depending on the reader. If you can match up for between the reader and the and the subject. And I think what I have over here now are just a couple more books that I'm planning to read over the next couple of weeks. So real quick, I haven't read these. Real quick, one of the books that was recommended by people on the For the Love of Comics, the Friends of For the Love of Comics, Friends of FtLoC, that's the name of the Discord server, was Press Enter to Continue by Anna Galvan. I know very little about this, but it got some very good reviews from people online as well as on the Discord server published by Fantagraphics Books. When I looked it up, it was on sale for some reason. It's a brand new book, or a newish book, and so it was one of those impulse buys just because I was in that sort of heady space of reading a lot of good stuff about it. This is a little more abstract, experimental, however you want to call it, but it looks really good. I'm very interested. I wanted to make sure that I was able to give it the kind of attention that it deserves and not just focus. There we go. Not just skip through it or flip through it like a coffee table book. Make sure that I am giving it, that attention. And so that's one thing that I'm looking forward to. I think it's science fiction. Once I read a couple of positive comments and reviews, I didn't want to get too much into it, or it's science fiction-ish. So that's one thing that I'm looking forward to. On the other side of the spectrum, as far as abstraction is concerned, is Rain by Mary and Brian Talbot. Mary and Brian Talbot, husband-wife team, I'm a big fan of theirs. I'm a big fan of Brian Talbot, who I first encountered, I would say, I guess I would have first originally seen Brian Talbot's work in issues of The Sandman, but then very quickly I read Granville, Tale of One Bad Rat, that was published by Dark Horse, and the Arkwright stories came. I mean, he's one of my favorite comic book creators. And then there was a book that he did with his wife called Daughter of Her Father's Eyes, which I talked about in one of my videos, which is a sort of dual biography. It's the story of Mary Talbot, his wife, and her growing up with her father, who was a very strict, and he was a very strict man, and he was a Joyce scholar. And the biography of Joyce's daughter, who suffered from depression, and Joyce wasn't the greatest father either. And it's this kind of twin biography of two daughters and fathers and Joyce scholarship. And it was very interesting, very intriguing. And she wrote it, and Brian Talbot illustrated it. And since then, I've been very interested in this combination. So Brian Talbot does a lot of work by himself or with other writers, and then there are these books that he's done with his wife. So there are 3 other books, and I've enjoyed all of them. Daughter of a Father's Eyes is probably my favorite, but they've got a book together called The Red Virgin. They've got Sally Heathcote, suffragette story, and Rain, again, I've heard is very good. I haven't read it yet. It is environmentally inclined. It has to do with our planet and the care that we take of it. Or I'm not very sure. I would normally be a little skittish because, again, as soon as something starts sounding like it has an agenda or a polemic, I wonder about the artistry. But because of the creators involved over here, I'm a little more, I mean, I would have gotten the book just because it's Brian and Mary Talbot. So that's one of those that I should be getting to very soon. And I'm almost done over here. 2 more books that I'm going to read very soon are the latest volumes that I've been able to get my hands of Order of the Stick. This is volume 5 and 6, which actually are the 7th and 8th collections of Order of the Stick. Those of you who've watched my top 10 fantasy comics, I mean, I have more than one video, but the actual final top 10 fantasy comics know that I've talked about this web comic, which I read in print form because they're self-published by Rich Burlew, who writes and draws them and publishes them online. And it's a fantastic series. As far as Dungeons and Dragons, D&D, I'm a D&D nerd who's never actually played D&D. As in, like, I really like the idea of gaming within that system. And I've played computer games, and I've seen and heard people play tabletop games. I think once I tried playing a tabletop game. I've even played it online. But this is D&D comics, very funny, very charming, and extremely surprising, epic storytelling with a number of characters, and it's very consistent. It's just a great comic series. So these self-published books are hard to get, but I was lucky that they were available to ship to India. So volumes 5 and 6, but there's also a volume 0, and there's a volume -1 and a volume -2. So there's actually 9 volumes in this. You can read the whole series online, Order of the Stick, on The Giant in the Playground, which is Rich Burlew's website, and it's great. So that's my comfort reading. I think I've read a lot of especially Hawking. I've read some challenging things. I've read something that is, Usagi Yojimbo, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Umbrella Academy. So this is like how I'll vary it up. I'll read something heavy, maybe something I don't know whether Drifting Classroom is going to be heavy or not. Let's see. Rain might be. Press enter to continue might be. So Order of the Stick is over there as comfort reading, as stuff that, because it's done in daily strips sort of things or weekly strips, I can read a couple of pages at a time as well and be entertained. And so, that's it. That's what I have. This is the pile of books that I've got to keep me company through my convalescence. And I got 2 prose books. They're not comics, but I did buy these prose books, and you can see why. Jack Kerouac's The Dharma Bums. Focus. What's going on? Can you Let's see. Can you make it out? And Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle. These are both from the Penguin Deluxe Editions series of prose books, and they've gotten, obviously, famous comics graphics artists to do their covers. So this is Thomas Ott over here, whose books I've talked about in high praise, and of course this is Jason over here. These are the back covers. There you go, they're in focus now. So there are a number of books in this series, and they all have fantastic illustrations on the covers, but many of them are books that I already own, so I'm not, as tempting as it may be, I'm not buying another copy of Dracula, another copy of classics that I have. These are two books that I did not own. Not a big fan of Jack Kerouac, but it does seem like the Dharma Bums and Jason, this is just irresistible. So I'll give Kerouac, I'll give Kerouac a shot again over here. I do like Shirley Jackson a lot, so Thomas Ott's creepy illustration just works perfectly, and I'm looking forward to reading these prose books for a change. Very, very nice. I mean, I don't usually talk about prose books and everything, but these are nice paperback editions with sort of rough, I don't know how they're described, these rough cut sort of edges. I can't get it to focus, it's too small. But yeah, so that's a big old stack over here. I'm guessing Drifting Classroom, Monster, and Ping Pong in the Mail, Rain, press enter to continue, and of course 2 volumes of Order of the Stick. Bertrand Russell, yeah, Logic Comics. I was talking about that earlier. It's mainly about Bertrand Russell, yeah, but it does have a couple of other people sort of take over for some pages. You think there'd be more existentialism in it's all existentialism. I mean, it depends on how we think about existentialism. I've always liked that idea of it being a very positive kind of philosophy, or what am I thinking of? Not the Matrix, not Inception, but it's kind of like, if you can make it up, and it's like lucid dreaming or something like that. I mean, that's one kind of fantasy approach that I think we could attach to that. Right, so that's what I have. Thank you, everyone, for being along for this ride and going through this pile of books with me. I do really enjoy chatting with everyone, so that's why not being online for a couple of weeks was starting to take its toll on me as much as COVID-19 was. I'll slowly make my way back online. I'm going to see if I can get back to work this week or not. I haven't spent any time really online. I've responded to a couple of comments by using my phone, but I've been trying to follow the advice of staying away from screens as much as possible. But it's been a great 3 years. I did not expect 3 years ago when I picked up my phone and started recording, Absolute Sandman and Akira 35th anniversary box set, those 2 videos, that I didn't expect that I would be over here chatting with everyone in this way. Long may it continue. I have no plans to stop making videos anytime soon. So I hope that you guys are going to be around for everything we've got coming up. So thank you very much. Have a good rest of the weekend for those of you who've got any time left. Stay safe, stay careful, and I'll talk to you guys soon. All right, take care.